What is going on, everybody? So today we're going to talk about probably the largest investing fallacy that I see people bring up all the time. And it really does bother me at this point just because I've actually made so many videos and blog posts and I've talked about this multiple times, but I understand new people come to the channel. And the reason I'm making this video is I got a comment, I think yesterday or the day before, saying that, they were trying to call me out for saying that I would prefer to buy a $200 set that I think is good, like Emperors in the New World, compared to something that's trash like Royal Blood or Two Legends. And the reality is, you are probably going to make more money buying Emperors in the New World at $200 a booster box than buying Royal Blood at $80 a box. That is more likely than not going to be the reality. And the person said that that line of thinking is emotional, right? And you got to leave your emotions aside. And the argument about what makes a set good or bad is not an emotional one. And I agree, it's not an emotional argument, but it's an objective one. When you look at sets and you look at the cards inside of them, you can figure out, based on demand, sell-through rate, the top chase card values, which sets are going to be more expensive in the long term, more or less, right? There's always going to be outliers, sets that maybe don't cop a reprint ever. Something in culture pops up, people really enjoy one card, and then that set for some reason just explodes out of nowhere. Like, there are black swan events that happen, but for the most part, it's very obvious, at least to most people, which sets are going to do the best long term. And today, we're going to be taking a look at annualized ROI. We're going to take a look at some Pokemon sets because, look, One Piece is still very new, so it's difficult for us to look at annualized ROI on a lot of these sets. The game is not new, but I'm going to give you the example with Pokemon, and it's going to be very obvious. And then we'll also take a look at some booster boxes from One Piece. Again, we don't have a ton of data, but I'll just give you a snippet, right? And it should be obvious just by looking at this and to understand what's really going on here, right? So to hop into this, we're first going to look at a lot of sets in Pokemon. If you guys follow Pokemon, Evolving Skies is probably the best set of the modern era. Incredibly popular. You have the Umbreon in there, lots of other evolutions, Rayquaza, Dragonite. It's an amazing set. Now, this person again was saying that they would rather buy a box of a set that they think is probably worse, or I would say is a worse set, at $80 compared to buying a set that's already double MSRP or triple MSRP or something. So for this data, we're going to be using January 1st, 2024 to May 24th, 2025. So a year and a half worth of data. Now, why are we taking this date? Well, on January 1st, 2024, Evolving Skies was almost 3 times MSRP, which for a lot of people, you'll see them say, I'm not paying 2x MSRP or 3x MSRP. It's way too expensive. I'd rather just go buy something like SV Base or Obsidian Flames or whatever. Like, these boxes are $80, $90. These are going to double way faster, right? You're going to get way higher returns. They're super cheap. It's much easier for a box to go from 400, it's much easier for a box to go from 80 to 160 than a box to go from 400 to 800, right? Come on, like, that's just logical. But is it really logical? Is that really what is going on here, guys? Well, we're going to take a look at that. And by the way, if you want to look at this data, this all comes from Pokedata. I just threw the boxes into my account. And then once you have one in your collection, quote unquote collection, right, you can add it to there. Then you can kind of just go through and track every single day, right? 2022, 2023, all the way up. So that's where I'm getting this from, but you could pull from wherever. It's not really going to make a difference. It's not super relevant. So on that day, you can see all these prices here in USD. Evolving Skies was 417, Fusion was almost 150, Brilliant was right there at 150, Astral was 125.56, and then Lost Origin was $127.74. On the same day, you could have bought SV Base for $80.61. You could have bought Paldea Evolve for $95.52. You could have bought Obsidian for $94.78. And you could have bought Paradox Rift for $87.72 USD. And again, if you're not interested in Pokemon, please just stay through this because it is important and it does apply to One Piece. Now, if I asked you which set you think would have done the best, which set would have given you the best return year over year based on the price they were at on January 1st, 2024, what would you have said? Would you have said SV Base? I mean, it's the cheapest, right? You could have bought this for $80. That's That's super cheap. Surely you'd get the best return buying this box because it's a low multiple of MSRP. Maybe you'd say Paradox Rift, it's only a little bit more expensive, $87, $88 almost. Obsidian Flames, everyone says this set's underrated and you should have bought this. Well, we're gonna take a look here at the ROIs. I'm gonna remove this, and this is annualized ROI, by the way. So again, year over year growth, what you're going to be expecting. I'm just gonna have to zoom out and edit the tab here 1 second. And boom, there you go. You can see, guys, this is probably not what a lot of you would have expected. Annualized ROI, you can see here, the highest one on the list, Fusion Strike, 217.65% annualized ROI. Evolving Skies, third highest. Lost Origin, second highest, 177.74. Evolving Skies, 171.9% annualized ROI. And again, this was 3 times MSRP, from 3x MSRP essentially, until now, 171.9% annualized ROI. Brilliant Stars, only 113.53. Astral Radiance, 134.41%. Now, we'll go look at the cheap boxes, right? The ones that logically would double the fastest, apparently, according to some people, right? Look at these returns. SV Base, 99.25% annualized ROI. That's still amazing, by the way. That is awesome returns there, but much lower than everything that was more expensive than it. Paldea Evolved, the only one that beats out Brilliant Stars from SV Era, 123.98% annualized ROI. Obsidian Flames, 98.72%, and then Paradox Rift, 88.12%. So all of these boxes that were cheaper on January 1st, 2024, haven't gotten the best returns compared to Sword and Shield boxes. And why is that? Why would you think that that is the case? The reality is a lot of these boxes from Sword and Shield are incredibly desirable. Evolving Skies, Fusion Strike, Lost Origin, these top 3 ones that are just absolutely blowing everything else out of the water. These are very deep sets, especially Evolving Skies. And again, like if you take the annualized ROI of Evolving Skies from MSRP, or where you could have bought it at $100 on release or whatever, this number is way more impressive compared to everything else. And we'll take a look at that here in a second when I show you guys my blog post showing 5 years of data. But these sets that are super deep, they have desirable cards, they do the best long term. When you look at SV Era, Paldea Evolved, it's got the Magikarp in there, and it's not surprising that compared to any of these boxes from SV Era, that it did the best. And again, just a side note, this is why I hate when people bring up Obsidian Flames and go, oh, you should have bought Obsidian Flames when it was $80, $90. Well, I bought Paldea Evolved when it was $90. And the reason I bought that over Obsidian Flames is because at the time I looked at both of those sets, I went, hey, these are the same price and one of these sucks and the other one's very good. So which one am I gonna buy? I'm gonna go with Paldea. And if you bought Paldea, you're getting about a 25% higher return annualized ROI compared to Obsidian Flames. And that's why I hate the argument, because when you look at it from an objective perspective, actually comparing sets to each other, you get better returns with the better sets on average, even when they're getting 2 MSRP or pushing 2-3x MSRP for some of the best sets. And the same thing kind of applies to One Piece. Again, we don't have like 5 years or 10 years of data for One Piece yet. And ideally, I'd say you want about 5 years of data. So for example, I wrote a blog post in February. Again, this is my website for my other channel, PokeProfit, pokeprofit.ca if you want to go read this. I took basically every Sword and Shield set, and then also SV Era sets up to Temporal Forces. So basically every box that was about a year old at that point, I threw in here. And the reason you don't take younger sets than that, like at this point when I wrote this, Surging Spark, Stellar Crown, Twilight were already out. Annualized ROI gets very skewed for sets that aren't even a year old. For example, at the time of writing this, if I threw in Surging Sparks, the annualized ROI would have been like 1,000% or something. So clearly that's not sustainable. But when you look at a lot of these sets that have 3 or 4 years of data at this point when I wrote this, you could see Evolving Skies from release. If you bought it for $100, you're up 110.53% year over year on this box. The second closest set from Sword and Shield is Lost Origin at 66.41. Fusion was at 59. Now contrast that to some of the worst sets from Sword and Shield era, like Rebel Clash, sub 20% annualized ROI. Darkness Ablaze, 16.04%. Vivid Voltage, 15.41. And even if you look at SV era back at this point in February, right, things have changed since then, but you compare Paradox Rift, Obsidian Flames, Paldea Evolved, you compare these sets to something like SV Base, which isn't that great of a set, basically about half the annualized ROI compared to Paldea Evolved and Obsidian Flames. So knowing all this, we're gonna do a little thought experiment here to close out this video and bring it back to One Piece, right? I have a few sets down here, the sets that I think most people think are the best in One Piece. You have OPO5, okay, great set, Luffy cards in there. You have OPO9, great set, Luffy card, Gold Roger. PRB01, you have all the manga reprints. I think most people would agree these are probably the three best sets in One Piece right now. Obviously, you could argue like Romance Dawn being the first one or whatever, but I'd say based on the depth of cards inside, people would say these are the best sets. Contrast that to a couple sets like 500 Years in the Future and Two Legends that really aren't that great. I could have also thrown in Royal Blood, but I wanted sets that had been out at least 6 months just to keep the data accurate. Royal Blood, I think, would have just came out, or maybe it was just pre-ordering at that point. And for this, I'm only using November 25th, 2024 until today, so basically 6 months. And in the calculator, I use 6 months instead of the exact days, so the annualized ROI is going to be off by like, tenths of a percent or whatever. But the point is, 6 months ago, you could have bought 500 Years in the Future for $106. You could have bought Two Legends for $79.23. I mean, that's cheap. Two Legends, sub $80, that's amazing, especially compared to Awakening of the New Era, which was $170 almost. PRBO1 was $158. Emperors in the New World, $143, $144. I mean, why would you buy any of these very expensive sets when you could buy these sets that are much, much cheaper? And I think you guys know where I'm going with this, so let's just cut to the reveal. So yeah, as you can see, the more expensive sets, OPO5, 09, PRBO1, the ones that are obvious to most people are the better sets, the deeper sets, better chase cards, 178.27% annualized ROI since November, 238% ROI, annualized ROI since November. Emperors in the New World, 78.64% annualized ROI since then. 500 Years in the Future, 24.5%. Two Legends, 43.68%. Not terrible, but again, this is nowhere near any of these. And I will concede this, and it's not really a concession to be honest, but as sets get more expensive, the annualized ROI is normally going to come down. And you can track all the way back to XY era booster boxes in Pokemon, Black and White era, even Sun and Moon, and you can look at the first 3 to 4 years of a set's release and then compare it to the next 3 to 4 years, and you'll see that annualized ROI does drop off a lot. A lot of boxes were in about the, probably 40 to 50% first few years. Now it's down to 15, 20% on a lot of those boxes. But the reality is the sets that are the best, like your OPO5, Awakening of the New Era, like your PRBO1, and I'll bring these up here again, if you guys forget what we're talking about here. OPO5, amazing set. PRBO1, amazing set. Emperors in the New World, amazing set. These sets are normally going to do better than things like 500 Years in the Future, like Two Legends, like Royal Blood. And that's not to say there isn't any utility in buying sets like this, but buying a box that's very, very cheap, you need to understand most of the time you're doing that to limit your downside risk. For example, in Pokemon, if you're buying a box for $80, we've never really even seen booster boxes get below $70, so there's very minimal downside. Whereas if you're buying something for $200, $300, $400, sure, it could cop massive reprints and you could be stuck holding the bag for a long time. Same thing in One Piece. You could have bought OPO5 for $250 per reprint. It drops to $125. Then you're losing basically 50% on your money and you have to wait an entire year until it gets back to even. Whereas if you buy a box of, say, Two Legends or Royal Blood for $80, $90, there really is not a lot of downside. Even if there is a massive reprint coming or a wave 2, whatever, you're not going to see it drop to $30, $40, $50. It's just not realistic. But at the same time, you need to understand that that is the justification for doing so and to limit your risk rather than actually expecting to make more money than buying a more expensive set. Because even though these sets are more expensive, they're more than likely going to give you better returns just because there is such a discrepancy between the chase cards, between the demand for a set like OPO5 and OPO8, for example. And you can get very nuanced with this data and break it down set by set and do really deep comparisons. And I think that's fine and there's probably utility in doing that. But the point of this video was just to get across that just because something doesn't make sense to you doesn't mean that it's incorrect, right? And we always need to challenge our belief systems, especially when investing in something like TCGs. And look, I fell into the same trap when I was starting out. I thought that buying something that was cheap, it didn't matter what it was. I would just, buy a little bit of it. But then you realize things like liquidity, like sell-through rate, like having decent chase cards, all of this stuff matters a lot more than you think. So again, no hate towards anyone, not trying to throw shade, just the fact that you really have to challenge your belief systems, and that if you are going to argue something, at least come with data to support it. At the end of the day, in investing, we don't win by having random arguments on the internet. We win by looking at things analytically and actually making decisions based on what the data is telling us that we should do. So hopefully all of that makes sense. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you are shopping on eBay, TCG Player, Hobbiesville, Cardboard Hero, I have affiliate links in the description down below. They're free and easy to use. I get a small kickback. It helps me continue to make free videos for you guys. Also, if you're looking to get deeper into the One Piece and Pokemon business side of the hobby, definitely feel free to book a consult call with me. I can answer any question you have about starting up a business, working with an eBay store, a brand, etc. With all that said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Stay safe wherever you are in the world, and I'll catch you in the next one.